In 1999, there was a real sense of foreboding dread about the onset of a new millennium.
Here's to another lousy millennium.
Would capitalism collapse? Would computers fail? Was all we knew to be true about to come undone as the clock ticked over into the next century? Well, no. The closest thing we saw to a cataclysmic disaster was Battlefield Earth. 2001's Vanilla Sky is dripping with the residual anxieties of Y2K. As with several features from around this time, it views reality as a construct of surreal coincidence and subjective interpretation, a place where our very existence may just be an avatar wandering through an elaborate facade. At the time of its release, critical reactions were mixed, to say the least. Some called it a transgressive departure for Tom Cruise and writer-director Cameron Crowe, whilst others considered it a pretentious exercise in navel-gazing indulgence.
I'm so fucked up! I'm just so fucked up!
20 years later, how does Vanilla Sky hold up? A reworked and reimagined take on the 1997 Spanish release Abre los ojos, Vanilla Sky follows David, a prideful playboy sleepwalking through a life of wealth, women, and reckless abandon. After a scorned lover leaves him dejected and mutilated, his life spirals into a waking blur of dreamlike visions, disjointed memories, and inescapable paranoia.
David, look at all these people. Maybe they're only here because you wanted them to be here. You are their god. And not only that, but you can make them obey you or even destroy you.
Well, what I'd love for them to do is shut the fuck up, especially you.
By Lynchian standards, this may seem like a sanded-down introduction to Dreamlogic cinema, one in which mewling homunculi and garbage monsters are nowhere to be seen. While I don't think that sort of elitism is helpful, I get it. Tom Cruise and Cameron Crowe hardly give off Louis Buñuel fanboy energy. However, when you look at Vanilla Sky for what it was back in 2001, a big-budget marquee release starring three of the most beautiful people alive, it's hard not to see it as a cacophonous subversion. A work that at first feels obfuscated and out of sorts, only for the foreshadowing allusions to seem glaringly obvious on repeat viewings.
But the greatest surprise of all is that this doesn't have to end.
The book is Life, the sequel.
I'm assuming you've seen the damned thing if you're watching this, but here's the long and short of what the hell's going on. In the end, we're informed that at some indeterminate point, David died and was cryogenically frozen. What we're seeing are the lucid dreams of David's suspended consciousness. What sets this apart from other "it was all just a dream" exercises in ambiguous storytelling is how meticulously every facet is culled and collaged from the thoughts, feelings, pop cultural imprints, and anxieties of its main character. Party entertainment comes in the form of holographic representations of the dead. Much like David's life and afterlife, these are synthetic apparitions that are vivid and fascinating, but ultimately empty. Dr. McCabe, a court psychologist evaluating David's mental state and forcing him to confront the casual cruelty of his waking life, is a grab-bag amalgamation of father figures in place of the one he never had.
Let's continue.
Even David's concept of romantic contentment is a plagiarized stencil of the freewheelin' Bob Dylan. Twilight Zone episodes and Carl Jung books, the prominent soundtrack placing of a band whose name stands for rapid eye movement, posters in an apartment highlighting David's obsession with Sophia and Julie. These aren't just scattered Easter eggs from a writer-director who's made a fortune siphoning off nostalgia and repurposing it as sincerity. This is a portrait of a life so superficial, so devoid of tangible human connection, it makes sense that the false reality he builds around himself is populated with second-hand images and iconography. A place where fleeting flirtations, media references, and needle drops are able to offer some comfort in the absence of a meaningful life. Now that's not to say Crow is above some nudge nudge wink wink fun. Your protagonist is convinced of some vast conspiracy even though that's not really the case. Well, just drop Radiohead's I Might Be Wrong in the background of the very next scene as a cheeky piss take. These meta-references never feel like an elitist D-bag showing off his vinyl collection. Whether they're being used as channel surfing texture, or thematic red flags to signify one man's reliance on pop culture in place of personal connection as he drifts ever further into the static of a digital age, these details make this swirling coma feel lived in and alive.
The subconscious is a powerful thing.
As you can probably tell, I've liked Vanilla Sky for going on 2 decades at this point, but I can understand why its off-kilter solipsism isn't for everyone. Yet, there are more troubling criticisms that persist to this day when discussing Tom Cruise's sprint through surrealism that I just can't get on board with. In the same way Starship Troopers satirized fascist militarism only to be accused of the very thing it condemns, Vanilla Sky is a film about the perils of narcissistic masculinity that was unfairly condemned as a shallow, misogynistic work.
Oh god. Wake up, man.
Sandwiched between the blockbuster cash factories of Mission Impossible 2 and Minority Report in Cruise's filmography, it's easy to see this as the textbook definition of a vanity project. One in which our star gets metaphysical, swings for the fences, and ticks off just about every awards-friendly emotional extreme. A story preoccupied with the notion that it's extremely difficult to live the life of a charming and handsome multi-millionaire.
You're rich and women love you, and I'm from Ohio and I'm drunk.
As for the women vying for David's affections, they're shallow archetypes, little more than angry and angelic opposites, to be fawned over or thrown away.
I think she's the saddest girl to ever hold a martini.
To dismiss this movie based on those skin-deep appraisals is to completely miss the exact point it's trying to make. What Cameron Crowe's doing here is using the foundational blueprint of Abre los Ojos as a sort of cinematic sieve, filtering out the cumbersome lumps of a romantic dramedy formula he'd become widely associated with, and taking to task many of the tropes he helped to popularise. In Jerry Maguire, Cruise was a cocky but charismatic dreamboat who used arrogance and strategic displays of vulnerability to win the day and get the girl. With Vanilla Sky, Crowe is looking at a protagonist with a largely similar psychological makeup from a far less idealized, more critical perspective, one that refuses to sugarcoat the conceited whims of an incredibly flawed lead. Right from the offset, David is seen tugging at grey hairs in a vain attempt to conquer his mortality with a painfully futile gesture, caring more about the appearance of youth than the young, beautiful woman in his bed. We then come to learn that his riches and respect aren't earned, they're inherited, and it's an empire built on sand. As a publishing magnate specialising in men's magazines, his fortune is owed to print media and the commodification of the male gaze, things that are about to be decimated by the democratization, instant gratification, and incomparable reach of the internet.
What the fuck is the internet?
As Stephen Hayden writes in This Isn't Happening, The whole thing is a genre-bending, mind-twisting portrait of the American male as he exists 5 minutes into the future. David is a lumbering dinosaur feasting on the last scraps of an antiquated existence. Still, David uses this tenuous position of power to control and coerce the women in his life, Sophia and Julie, both lured into his orbit for the sole purpose of fulfilling a designated role: to be mined for warmth and affection, or to be fucked and forgotten. As a writer often accused of using the Madonna-whore dichotomy just to give his male lead something to love or lust after, Crow satirizes his former failures whilst managing to flesh out and fully humanize Sophia and Julie at David's expense. Sophia is at first seen through the manic pixie dream girl lens of David's carefree worldview, where they spend a single night basking in innocent flirtations and oddball asides.
Do you want to hear Jeff Buckley or Vicky Carr?
Jeff Buckley or Vicky Carr? Both, simultaneously.
After David's brush with death, we're shown the uncomfortable darkness propping up these cliches, wherein the falling in love with someone after meeting exactly once staple of romantic fiction is played out to its creepy, horrifying conclusion.
Are you okay?
No.
What? No?
No.
Wait, what's wrong? Is it me? Is it me?
I'll tell you later.
No, tell me now.
I'll tell you later.
Something's wrong. Please tell me now. Everything. Let's talk about it all right now. Let's just talk about everything. Let's get it all out. Say everything now. Let's just
David.
Say everything now. Now.
As for Julie, what starts as a jealous, unhinged caricature of a crazy ex belies David's pathology as a user of women, a gaslighting, non-committal, life without consequences leech who toys with a mentally ill person right up until she breaks.
You fucked me 4 times the other night, David. You've been inside me.
Julie.
I've swallowed your cum. That means something.
When Julie commits suicide and in doing so seriously wounds David, his newly disfigured appearance isn't a deformation, it's an externalization. Only now that his carefree misogyny has been stripped of its smiling veneer by Julie's desperate final act, can the world see him for the stitched-together composite of a person he truly is. Before his injuries, David's public and private personas are manicured projections of swaggering ego. Afterwards, this divide becomes a literal mask, one that slowly starts to eat away at the face. The only way for David to shatter a life of delusion, make amends for all the wrong he's put into the world, and escape his self-involved prison is to mutilate and then destroy himself, before taking a leap of faith into the unencumbered unknown so that he can finally open his eyes.
Open your eyes.
Vanilla Sky would sadly mark the last steps into the realms of the weird for both Tom Cruise and Cameron Crowe. Cruise would return to the safety of 9-figure tentpole actioners and self-aggrandizing spectacle, whilst Crowe's career became an unfortunate slate of diminishing returns, where trite romance bled into mawkish sentimentality before settling on the ruinous whitewashing disaster of Aloha. Which is a damn shame after both acquitted themselves so honourably with this knotted nightmare. If you've never taken the time, or it's been a while since you settled down with this spiralling MC Escher head trip, don't sleep on Vanilla Sky. An eye-opening, extremely strange A-list experiment. A shout out to our Patreon producers Jennifer C, Claire MD, Becky O, and Nicholas Lair Revere. And the soundtrack for this film is absolutely incredible for all these amazing folks who support us over on Patreon. So what do you make of Vanilla Sky? Do you think it's an overindulgent vanity project? Or do you side with us when we say it's an underrated subversion? Let us know in the comments, and make sure you leave us a message down below, click the like button and share this video wherever you can. It really helps us out a lot. If you're in a position to do so, consider checking out our Patreon, where you can get a membership to the In Frame Out Film Club, your name in the credits, and access to our private Discord. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, this is In Frame Out.